𝐬𝐭 Talks production, I would like to warmly welcome our guest today, Laura Gomez. Now, we are definitely in for a treat. She's a venture capital and Latin America specialist. She's a highly accomplished individual and VC executive, masterful entrepreneur, and business strategist. She's the GM, general manager, and general partner of an edutech fund called LATAM, and she has been behind many, and I mean many, successful exits in FinTech, energy, BioTech, media, fashion, and retail startups. Laura, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Adam. Those kind of presentations always make me feel like more accomplishments that I give myself credit for.
Well, I mean, listen, your accomplishments speak for themselves. So I am more than happy to to give the most enthusiastic and passionate introduction. So, Laura, could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, how did you know you wanted to go on this entrepreneurship journey? Because this is a scary thing for a lot of people.
Adam, so first of all, thank you for having me here and have this opportunity to share with everybody that is watching us my story and some of my thoughts. So I actually have not a straight answer for that question, because I think that I don't even remember when I started wanting to be an entrepreneur, because I was too young. I probably knew since forever. So it's something that I grew up with. So I don't have an exact aha moment decided to go that path. I simply just, I don't know, since I was little, I saw my father like making businesses out of nothing, and just that's magic to me, like being able to create something out of nothing, just an idea. That's powerful. That's the power of creation that we as human have. Is wonderful. So I really don't have a straight answer of a when, of a particular when. It was with me all the time.
Right. I mean, hey, listen, and that is a great answer too. I think for some of these things, these are kind of subconscious. I think at times we feel drawn to certain things, and we may not realize why, or even realize what exactly we're doing. So it seems like it's been in the family, at least that type of drive, that personality trait to want to kind of create something, but also own your own time and own your own opportunities. So, and I think that is, yes?
Yeah, that is so true. Like being your own, and people just keep on criticizing this kind of answer, but it is important for some of us. Like freedom, it's very important to me. And
Yes.
being the owner of my own time and being able to create what I believe in, and and something that I have in my mind for a long time to make it a reality, that's of course surely and undeniably one big driver.
Right. And could you tell me about Edutech? What is Edutech? What does it mean to you right now? And, from an outsider looking in, I would imagine Edutech is very important, especially with the lockdowns right now. Most of our lives are remote, and most of our lives involve essentially working from home. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so EdTech is it's my new passion. And I think that it has always been there behind my head. I have never been satisfied with the state of education generally. Like I was never very happy at school. I thought that there was so much more than that, and that I could do. So when I had, but I think that was like, again, like in the back for such a long time, until finally there comes something that is more important for you than yourself, and that's when you have kids.
Right.
So when I became a mother, I was like, okay, I was able to be satisfied giving this to myself, but now we're talking about my kids. Is this really the best I can do for them? Is this really the best system? Is this really the best option that I can handle them, that I can, the best opportunity I can give them? Is this it?
Right.
And with that starts rolling with me, like with being an entrepreneur and getting into this tech world and knowing the huge opportunities and such a huge enabler that tech is, not being in the center, but again as a huge enabler. And having
Right.
working in innovation for 4 years now, I definitely said to myself, okay, it's time to do something about it.
That's awesome.
So the pandemic is definitely like an important inflection point in which you say, oh, we were so afraid of trying something different, but it hasn't been that bad, and something great have come out of it, right? And I started seeing my kids blooming, and I did what almost no not like not a lot of parents did. And the moment of the lockdown in March, I just saw my kids so bored, like the first 3 days, just watching at the screen, which they usually enjoy. But they were so bored watching at the screen that I told my husband, this is not going to work.
Right.
Schools weren't ready. Like nobody was ready. But this is just a digitalization of education. So this is not going to work. They would just be tired and not putting attention, and let's switch the model. So we
Right.
started exploring. I was so ready, like getting into, I was in the middle of getting out of my last job as innovation director of this big financial services conglomerate, and I was trying to think what was my next move. So it was a perfect timing because I started getting them into new platforms and start exploring with them new ways of learning. And
Hmm.
it turned out great. They were eager, they were happier, they started enjoying themselves, and I gave them the freedom and the trust to guide their own path. And I'm talking you about a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old. It's not like they have this much autonomy. But
Right. Right.
trusting them was, they really like blew out my expectations, because they were
Right.
able to guide themselves and earn confidence and start getting more involved in their own learning process. And that's where we, like, I received this call that looks like destiny, and I love that, because every time that you're really open and start tuning with something, it's like the universe tunes too. So I
Right.
just received this call from a friend telling me, we're making this fund, and we want it just to be about edtech, and I want you in. So I was like, it was a no-brainer. I was like, yes, this is something that we have to do, especially now, and especially in Latin America.
That is awesome. And I have to say, too, as a parent, I have a 4-year-old son, so I share those very same concerns. And I think if you speak to parents anywhere in the globe, where you send your kids for their primary school education is very, very important. And even here in the United States, myself and most parents will express their problems and issues with the education system here. So, from where you are, what major problems were there in the public school system that you were concerned about? Obviously, the remote learning and the way that it was being done wasn't helpful, because I think kids looking at a screen too long, I think it actually zaps their mental stamina, and I think it makes it harder to concentrate later. But what were some of the things you saw?
There are so much, and there's still not resolved yet, right? And again, the answer is not tech by itself. Tech is a great
Yeah.
enabler, but there's so much more. So first of all, I've started researching more about new models, and I just didn't want to got into the methodology trap, like should be Montessori or should it be, I don't know,
Right.
Waldorf or whatever, because
Right.
I've been in that loophole, and in innovation, like having run an innovation department, you get to know that when people get obsessed on the methodologies, they miss the point.
Right.
Like innovation is not about just putting post-its in your wall, or using agile or scrum or whatever. It's about really, it's like if you get obsessed with the hammer and not with the masterpiece that you can make, right? You have to be
Right.
obsessed with the outcome. The like the tools that you use in the process are great, and you can take, like, grab and leave whatever in every necessary moment.
Yes.
So I just decided not to went in that loophole of methodology is the best, but more into the why. Like, why do I like why do I want my kids to get educated, and what does education means for me, and
Right.
what should we be educating on? Because right now we're educating on a, like, the education model that runs the world. The world right now was invented by this German guy, that was in the military, right? So it's based on obedience. So
I
we
see.
have a model based on obedience first, and then the industrial revolution came,
Right.
and we decided that that model was good for creating people to get to these new jobs, right? But these new jobs were just serial making of products, right?
Right. It was manufacturing, to be honest, during the Industrial
Manufacturing.
Revolution.
So
So,
how can we get these great employees that obey
right.
and that go to this manufacturing companies and just be do what they have to do and don't ask questions?
Right.
Just do what you have to do, right? So this, and everybody knows this, this is not new, so we have not advanced much in
Right.
that system since then.
Right.
uh, and the thing right now, and again especially in Latin America, is if you have read Sapiens from Yuval Harari, he talks about the useless class. And I do think that the useless class is not going to be the base of the pyramid in Europe or America, but it's probably going to be regions as a whole, or continents, like probably Africa or Latin America, if we don't believe. And the thing is that, especially, is that Latin America uh, has always had a catch-up strategy.
I see.
And when the world is going at this piece of speed, catching up is always being late. So we are, every time we try to catch up, we are just investing resources that are not really going to get us anywhere. So we have to leave. And with that in mind, and saying, and just asking the right questions, like, are we, because the why comes in again, and it's okay, so are we going, even though the actually the education system is not correctly educating the kids for the future jobs,
Right.
they, like, we're not even meeting that standard, which was the one that we should be doing right now. We're not even meeting that need. um, so we have to think again, why? Because if it's for a job, we're not doing it either. If it's for a blooming human being, if it's
Right.
for achieving full potential, we're not either.
Right.
So what do I want from this? And the answer was, I think that we left humanism aside at some point, and we
Right.
forgot the whole point of being humans. And we are definitely not educating our children for that. And we are saying, we're in the middle of, this pandemic. It's, yeah, like, health wise has opened our eyes in so many ways, but
Right.
there's a bigger pandemic right now that goes beyond COVID, and it's the mental health one,
Right.
right? So it has a lot to do with the value systems that we have created as new, like our new civilization and as a culture have created a set of values that doesn't help you flourish.
Right.
And I think that's part of the crisis. So that's all this to answer the why. So
Mm.
we have to get back humanism. We have to give kids empowerment. We have to teach them social, emotional skills and how to interact with the world and how to envision and make their dreams come true and go after them. And at the same time, how can they be useful to society as a whole, right? And
Right.
and,
And
and
I wanted to know too. So how do you make learning more, I guess you can say, more effective and engaging? As time goes on, many studies have indicated that people tend to fall into certain categories of learning styles, whether it's visual learning, whether it's audio-based learning, or even kinesthetic learning. Some people actually need to hold onto something or move around as they're actually learning. So, kind of keeping in mind all of these very old and now kind of useless models, how do you make education more creative and more effective for children?
that's where technology kicks in. It is so much easier to to personalize the education journey and to create journeys that are much more engaging and appealing for kids with the use of technology, because you can know them better, you can understand better the way they interact with themselves, with others, and with the world around them. So you can create this kind of experiences that are more suited for each kid. So that's great, and we live in this time that we can do that, and that's
Right.
great, and we have to take advantage of that.
Right.
So that's one. The other thing is that I think that we're um, a little bit leaving behind the model of the inductive learning and go again to the deductive learning kind of thing. And this means that you don't need a teacher anymore, just standing there and telling you
Right.
why and how to do everything, and just try to pull you like knowledge in and their own visions with their own biases. And now we're seeing more peer-to-peer learning and the kids learning more from each other and talking to each other. And we're seeing also a shift from, again, the traditional teacher as a power figure,
Right.
more of a tutor, like someone that accompanies the kid and that is more aware of its like n- might be psychological and other kind of needs that enable the learning better. And there's something very interesting here, and it's the fact that I don't know if I told you this the last time, but there's this study from McKinsey that they started saying that the PISA, the tests, the standardized tests in Latin America, we were doing so poorly. And they said, okay, we have to understand why is this, why is
Right.
education in Latin America so damaged, what's
Right.
happening. So they brought in the usual suspects. So the usual suspects are, it's curriculum, it's teachers, is socioeconomic criterias, or yeah, the environment they live on. What can it be?
Right.
And they started studying this, and someone very smart in the room say we have to see the outliers, because
Right.
there has to be an explanation to the fact that 100 kids did poorly but with the same curriculum in the same school with the same teachers, the same social economic reality, but someone outperformed. So what is the difference? What is in that outperformer that makes him stand out, right? And they started studying these outperformers, and they understood that mindset was the as a sole variable was the most important variable in this academic success of the kids, but also in the final outcome success in life of a person. So we start understanding education not from a content point of view only,
Right.
but also a psychological and how to wire your thoughts in a positive way and how to engage with challenges. That it's even more important than the other ones. But the key here is that you can or can't teach math. Like you can not, if you decide not to teach your kid math, then he won't know how to add or multiply, subtract, or whatever. And if you decide not to teach him how to write, he can never learn how to write or read.
Yeah.
But even if you decide how not to teach him and wired him with the mindset, it's something that he is receiving and absorbing from the day he's born. So you have to be so aware and so conscious of these kind of things, because they're learning it. Either you decide to teach them or not, they're learning how to view the world, and you're giving them, every experience is giving them a lens to see the world in a certain way, and that lens is the one that's going to be super like a very something that would determine the long run outcome of this kid.
And that ties into a question that I've had in my mind. So if you watch the news and you're looking at emerging economies and emerging tech ecosystems in Latin America, often places like Colombia, Argentina, and Brazil come up, especially when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrency technology. So it seems like if I was to take those three countries seem to be getting richer as we speak. However, education numbers and literacy levels are not rising, which that is something I found very, very interesting. More prosperity is coming into these countries, but at the same time, the literacy levels and education levels are really not moving. So I was going to ask you, why is that? Because usually, when prosperity goes up, often literacy goes up. And that's not the case here necessarily.
Yes, well, I think that there's something very interesting going on right now in Latin America, because you see a different kind of advancement, that it's not necessarily pulled by institutions.
I see.
But it's more like America has always been a cyclical and unstable region if you see it as a whole, right? Every country is in a different moment on political and social factors, right? So you can see Venezuela completely on one side after being the wealthy one and and an example for Latin America. But then you see others following the same path slowly, and then you see ones prosper. So to speak about Latin America as a whole, it's hard. But what's happening is that I think that entrepreneurship and technology has brought access, and it's a huge window. So even though institutions are not very well at catching up or at getting ahead,
right,
people have been having this opportunity in their hands of using these devices in different ways and adopting and being part of a global society without being sometimes first being a part of their local society, right? So we're seeing this phenomenon in which people are starting also to educate themselves, and I don't want to get into the conversation if it's if it's a good or bad quality education or whatever, but they have access, and when they have access, some things that you might not expect and that might look weird start happening, like those. You see the penetration, for example, of Facebook and smartphones in Colombia is outrageous.
Right.
So there are all these people with, for the first time, with some kind of access, even though they haven't had proper access to traditional institutions. So I
Right.
think that if this is a huge opportunity, and if we really find a way to cultivate this in a in a constructive manner, it can change the whole region. And we have to think it that way. We have a region of early adopters, which is some kind of weird for a lot of people. Like,
Right, right. And mindset is very important. And I think in fact everything starts in your mindset and really whatever you do. And we had this conversation a few weeks ago about mindset. And I was explaining, some of the mindset here in the United States, I think even despite the large problems that we have here, there is still always this notion you can one day do it. You can one day become rich. Everybody loves a good comeback story here in the United States. You told me in Colombia, it's much different.
yes, and I think and I have been talking about this for the past few weeks. We have such a toxic narrative that we need to change.
Uh,
Stories that we tell ourselves uh, really shape our minds and shape our
yeah,
realities. I know that there's a lot of people that don't like we talking about the brain as a machine or as a computer, and I know it's not, and it works differently. But just
yeah,
bear with me with this. And it's
absolutely.
the brain is such a hyper efficient machine, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with this principle that is called the Freestone principle. And
No, what is it?
what Freestone says is that the brain that is obsessed with predictability. Predictability
Makes
helps us
sense. Yeah.
feel secure, safe, plan, and we need to, like, we have this need to plan since the beginning of times,
Right.
crops to survive, right? So
Right.
the brain likes predictable outcomes. So whatever narrative you have in your mind, your brain will definitely and incessantly will try to get that done, because it has. So it's not about what you want, and I know this might sound a little bit like The Secret, but it's not about what you want. Your brain will gives you and will show you the reality you think that it's more possible, right? The more
Wow.
it will try really hard to accomplish that outcome that you are more like, that you are more fixed to predict, not the one you
Hold on.
want,
So,
the one
so
that you can.
based on that, people without knowing it will be programmed for failure because that's what the mind is subconsciously more comfortable with.
Exactly, because it I don't know if more comfortable, because that's
Wow.
weird. Yeah, it is more comfortable with what it knows. So
Right.
if you're set up for
Yeah.
failure, and what you know the most is failure, and that's the only reality that you're able to really believe, then your brain will try to set you up for failure, because it is
Wow.
the predictable outcome. So the thing there is that narratives are so powerful, and
Yeah.
those stories that we tell ourselves, and that are wired within us since the beginning of times, just really end up creating our reality. And again, Latin America has been not very smart at managing this, and we have tell
Wow.
forever our own stories about violence, uh, corruption, and I don't know, wars, and
Sure.
drugs, and all these ghosts that haunt us.
Sure.
And it start becoming the only reality you see. And one of those stories is also that there's no opportunities in Latin America. And that is so absurd, because Latin America is the land, for me, is really the land of opportunities. There's so much to do. We are so abundant. In Latin America, you just, like, a seed falls in the ground and it would just bloom. Like you're hungry and you just raise your hand and you will grab a mango and like there's
Yeah.
we are the most biodiverse region in the world.
Oh yeah.
Latin America has the most water resources in the world. We are the most happier people in the world. So how come we tell ourselves such negative narratives?
And
In
that was
the
going to be my
moment,
follow-up question, but I'm sorry, I'll let you finish first.
no, it's just that in the moment that we understand the power of narrative and we start telling ourselves better narratives, and we go back to education, and I love this question because actually education should be about the narratives that we should tell our kids for to set
Very
them for
nice. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
like the difference between you and I, probably we saw the same things in school. We both multiply. Like it's not that
Sure.
different in
Right.
any region in the world. But the difference might be that you grew up in a society that told you that you are growing in a place where opportunities are in, where effort is compensated. When
Right.
if you work enough, you will succeed. I grew up in a place that told me that the government is awful. It just rob us. Everything that
Right.
anybody do that it's going wrong, it's fault of the government. It's not an empowering narrative.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's very self-defeating because it robs you, I guess, of any autonomy. It robs you of really any personal freedom. I guess if you kind of resign yourself, everything outside of me has been decided already, so there's nothing I can do. So I was
Exactly.
actually going to ask you, so just to maybe get a little bit more context on this. So if you're in Colombia or Argentina or some of these other countries in South America. So let's say if you're born poor, are people just going to believe I'm poor, my parents are poor, this is what the rest of my life will look like? And then on the flip side, if you're rich, I'm rich, my expectations are rich, my family's rich, I'll be rich. And it's like I'm always going to be rich forever, which obviously is not the reality of life though, but and then maybe on the flip side, people like I'm poor forever, there's no way I can get out of this. Is it kind of like that?
Yes, I don't want to like minimize it because of course there's a lot of other factors.
Right.
But just saying again, getting back to this McKinsey study, just saying that there might be a lot of variables, but the one that has the most um like that has the most weight in the equation is its mentality and mindset, and thinking that you can go, that you can learn, and that are not fixed with your own reality. If
Right.
you know that just sole factor, it's so determining enough, then it doesn't mean that the other factors don't affect you. It just means that if you can challenge if you can shift your mindset, or more like there's more probability that you can shift your reality too.
Right.
So if we know that, like, then my next question would be: should Latin America be thinking about a better narrative, or more constructive narrative? And second, shouldn't education be about creating that mindset and getting that belief system into place
Right.
to empower kids to really make a change? There's, again, and I would not get tired of saying this, we've got so much abundance in this region. It's such a beautiful, amazing, rich, exuberant part of the world. And we just decided to diminish ourselves with these demoralizing narratives that we keep on also helping penetrate. Like every time I just get pissed every time I get to the US and somebody just knows that I'm Colombian and they start asking me for white powder. I'm like,
Oh.
there's so much more in this region. Like, what
Yeah.
the hell? And we help with our, like, the stories we create, the movies we make, the songs we play, like everything just keeps on helping that narrative bloom, right? And until we don't
Right.
change that, it's 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 useless to change education, right? Like we can start just creating new coders for the world and just
Right.
great, but they will be just coders hired by a multinational company that have a better narrative than us, and nothing great will come out of this land if we don't shift up, like if we don't do a paradigm shift.
Right, and I'll have to say, unfortunately, I think Hollywood probably had much to do with, those stereotypes regarding Colombia and people from Colombia. So I wouldn't put it all on Colombia or Colombians itself. Unfortunately, I think Hollywood is very good at making money at stereotypes. Unfortunately, so hence why people like
But
Netflix more
they use it
nowadays
for
anyway.
good
So
also. If you see in the US, like every Hollywood movie, like you Independence Day, I don't know, Armageddon, like
right,
always the US saves the world. Then
right,
the
it's always that.
starts
Yeah,
moving, everybody puts their hand in their heart, and you
right,
just wish to be American. It's a narrative.
right,
It's not, it's a reality because it's a narrative told so many times that it
right,
becomes a reality. But there's
right,
no
right.
difference.
Absolutely.
But there's no difference, and if, like, it can easily be a different narrative, and it can easily be the Brazilian flag moving if
Right.
we just empower ourselves and believe that we can really, really do it differently.
Right, right. And speaking about abundance, and I think it's great that more people should know that. Latin America is effectively the most resource abundant region of the world, consistently. However, mostly negative narratives come out. But if we were to talk about the positive narratives, and by the way, to truths, in fact, tell me about the startup in venture capital ecosystem there. Speaking of abundance, because like I said, anytime I look at the news and it comes to Latin America, when it comes to startups, when it comes to the next regions that are going to have their tech booms, it's Brazil, it's Colombia, it's Argentina. So tell me, what is the startup ecosystem like, and what is it like trying to get venture capital down there? Because it seems to me there's a lot of investors willing to take chances with companies down there, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people necessarily know about this.
Well, yes and no. Like, the answer is, we have we have had a leap really in the ecosystem, like maturity. If you see the startup ecosystem and innovation ecosystem in Latin America, maybe 8 years ago, it was a completely different world than now.
Sure.
I think that also, and again, coming back to narrative, something has helped. We had a very, very narrow minded, very local minded kind of entrepreneurs. Everybody was trying to solve the problem of, like, this little problem of the in their city, or but
Right.
there wasn't like this kind of mindset of, I can solve huge problems, and we as Latin America are a huge region, so a huge market, so a huge opportunity. So they're like people that started starting abroad, and that started bringing this kind of mindset, started doing their things, and started crossing over,
Right.
like Mercado Libre or all these companies
Oh,
that started
yeah.
crossing over, and realized that Latin America as a region was uh, appealing enough, but also, again, enabled by tech. Crossing over is easier, because this doesn't mean that the that incumbents weren't crossing over. It was just much harder.
Right.
Now, with technology, they could cross over easier, and they found out that we had, as a region, a lot of similar problems.
Right.
So the ecosystem started blooming, I think that 8 years from now, and the change you can see, it's really, really huge. And what started happening is that, again, like, international VCs are starting putting their eyes on Latin America.
Right.
But again, I will challenge the narrative here. The narrative in which international VCs are seeing Latin America, it's pretty
Right.
much copycats or models that have worked somewhere else
Right.
that can be applicable, though they need some kind of adaptation
Right.
in Latin America to conquer markets. So VCs, and this is my challenge, VCs are still very conservative in their approach with Latin America because they are investing in this kind of, again, copycats with proven models
Right.
somewhere else. And but they don't really think, when you really ask the right questions, and you get to see that they don't really think that an innovation that can change the world can come out from here.
And that leads me to a follow-up question. So, keeping in mind that a lot of venture capital companies in Latin America, they tend to at least be on the conservative side for now. What do venture capital companies look for in startups? So when you have co-founders pitching to these VCs and to these venture capital firms, what are these VCs looking for when a startup approaches them looking for money and looking for funding?
It depends a lot also in the stage of the company, right? Like,
Right.
entrepreneur would always be the most important factor, but it becomes heavily important in the first part of the company, because when you're investing in a seed round, right, in the first stages, in
Right.
like an early stage, you know that probably what they're pitching to you, it's not at the end what you're going to be
What it's going to
investing
end up
in.
being, right?
So the most important part there is the entrepreneur, the team as a whole, and their capacity to learn from mistakes, to pivot fast, that they can see that they are fast in seeing the signals of the environment and just reshaping their model or their product or whatever needs to be shifted promptly, right? So that's the most important factor when you're starting doing VC in more like late stage um, uh, companies, like more growth. Then you
Right.
have
That was going to be my next question. So what about later stages?
then you see traction, like of course the team, but you start seeing traction, unit economics, the vision is very important, the strategy, the whole team, how the culture, like you start the size, the market size, you start giving more weight to things that maybe at the beginning you can just decide to leave it for later. But especially I think that we're always looking for, and I will challenge this one too, as VCs, it's not BS. I don't want to get everybody like against me.
No, listen, speak freely.
we,
By all means.
we do look for amazing entrepreneurs that are passionate about solving a huge problem, and that's what every VC
Wow.
will tell you, and
Wow.
that's true. But at the same time, and when you give money to someone, there has to be trust.
Right.
So if you start saying, there are all these studies about the entrepreneurial mafia, which is the PayPal mafia or the Rappi mafia, or it depends on the country, right?
Right.
And it's not bad, but we have to find a way to challenge this, because there are such great entrepreneurs with such great startups that are not as funded and not receiving funding just because they are not part of this selected group of people that made it first.
So there's a
And
little bit of a club, so to
it's
say. There's a little bit of its own. Right.
you have to, like, there are stamps that are always welcome, like Stanford
Right.
stamp. That's the like, or and especially if you studied with, you're the entrepreneur that studied with the guy that runs a fund or works in a fund. Again, it's not bad. I'm not criticizing.
Right. Right. But
It's
this all makes This all makes
Exactly.
perfect sense.
You're pouring money into something, so you want to have that confidence that you know something about this guy, that he's, so it starts, so the money starts pouring in the same circles. And I think
Right,
that's why it's so important to also have into account, and that, like, to have this diversity approach,
right,
and to allocate part of your money into different kind of founders, and find out which is your, like, your comfortable risk taking into different kinds of entrepreneurs that are not necessarily with the with the credentials that you have always put your money in. But that's why hot intros are so important, for example. But just how often can we take a leap with these
right.
cold intro guys that they might not be in the club but have amazing ideas and amazing startups and just need like a push.
That is a wonderful explanation. So I have a follow-up question to that. So for example, cold introduction, if an entrepreneur pitches to you and your firm looking for funding and they're not part of any network, what do you personally look for in that entrepreneur, in that co-founders team?
It's always great to have a nexus. If it's definitely somebody that I have no reference on, I like the clarity on his vision. The vision is very important, that he's passionate on his vision, but he also knows very well what he's talking about, that he knows the business he's getting into,
Right,
that he has, that again, this passion that drives him don't become don't make him naive. You have to
right,
be naive enough to become an entrepreneur, right? You have
right,
to think that everything is going to be right, and it's you can't imagine, like, if you would knew how much obstacles you will find like down the road, you would probably don't do it. So
right,
it's
right,
perfect equilibrium between being super passionate but also being willing to see what might go wrong and know how you might deal with it.
right,
Also have an like, of course, you have to open my appetite, right? Like,
right,
the
of
problem
course.
you're trying to solve and the market you're trying to get into, it's so appealing that I just can't ignore you, even though you don't
Right.
know anybody that knows me.
There's got to be a hook. There's got to
There,
be a hook in this
yeah.
presentation. Right,
So great market, great opportunity, great. For me, it's very important that you as a person are a good person, and this is
right,
not something that it's a standard. Like, people,
right,
if this is a good business, I can invest. For me, it's very important that they have good foundations, that
sure.
are entrepreneurs that are really not here to fuck it up, or
Right,
fuck it.
yeah, exactly. They're, they're,
Um,
they're, yeah, they're playing to win. They're not just doing this
yeah,
casually. They're looking to make this
yeah.
successful no matter what.
And finally, I think that willingness to learn. You find
That is
so
very, very
many
important.
great entrepreneurs. Like, they are, I don't know if great entrepreneurs, but great ideas with great, like, very smart guy, but so cocky that that whenever you tell him something, or that the market is telling him something, he might not read it just
And you just
because
won't listen to it. Right,
he's so into himself that he might not just be humble enough to hear people and the
right,
environment and whatever. So that's also really important. So there's these soft skills that are very, very important. And of course, again, the business, the opportunity, the market size, the way you're addressing it, the team, those kind of things.
wow. That is incredible. And I would tell all the viewers, please be sure to pay attention to these points that Laura brought up. These are things you must know when you approach a VC, and these are things you must prepare and keep in mind as well. But Laura, to my follow-up questions as well, for you personally, what were some of your biggest obstacles so far in this journey?
In the VC journey, in life journey, in entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, across the board. Which things stand out the most?
Oh my God, there's nothing harder than being an entrepreneur. And I think that makes me like, that makes us, for example, in Latin Leap, and me running the corporate VC, a very
Yes.
different VC. Try to go to a VC with partners that have been in your shoes.
Right.
It's like there's nothing harder than that. uh like entrepreneurs are real champions, and I think that just recently history is starting to give them the place, or giving us the place we deserve, because
Right.
it's such a brave thing to just go after a vision,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And
Absolutely.
I think that the main obstacles have been, first of all, being very successful at a very young age made me very cocky at some point,
I see.
and losing everything was the most valuable and beautiful lesson I could possibly have. And as I told you, like, I lost everything. Like, I had this important exit, and I poured it all into this new company, and it was going great, and at the end I was left up with nothing, and I was 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
So I think that the biggest obstacle I had to to overcome at that time was not defining myself by that failure, because when you
Very
fail,
good.
it's very difficult to say I failed, and that doesn't mean I am a failure as a person,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
it is so easy to say, and like, it's like, oh, this girl, of course, but it is so hard to do it when you're living it, when you're in that moment of failure, when you have bet everything on this idea, and you just found out that it's just not gonna happen,
Right.
and unpersonalize that, and it's just a learn, and see it as a learning experience, and not let you define yourself by that. I think that has been a huge thing to do. And the second one was probably when my kids were born and when my mom died,
Oh,
was to learn that I shouldn't be defining myself by what I do, but from what I am.
that's wonderful.
And
Seriously, that deserves a clap. And I gotta say, Laura, you are a warrior. And I think people need to hear this because I think often people are too defined by their memories of failure and bad times versus who they are and what they can do. And now on a lighter note, what were your biggest successes?
my biggest, like, this is going to be so funny, but for me, raising the kids I have raised, like, I could tell you the exit, the
Right.
marrying the guy I married and having the kids I have, I
Oh,
see both and I say, oh my God, in this case, I choose so right. This is my soulmate. He's my companion in wars and in everything. And we are
that's beautiful.
acyclical again. So when I'm down, he's up, and when he's down, I'm up. So we compensate each other in a great way. So I did fine, and I
Right.
see my children, and I know that and they teach me every day. They consciously tell me a lot of things that I am like, oh fuck, I did this wrong.
Right. Same here
But
with my son. He tells me everything that's on his mind. Oh yeah.
so those are my biggest achievements of all. Like, the rest of them, great, and I do have a little bit of imposter syndrome. So for me, I might see them like not as great as they probably are, but I see those two, and I definitely see them for the greatness they have. So,
That is great. And as far as what is your personal philosophy and what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are going to start this journey? What advice would you give? And what guides you inside, like a philosophy or some sort of purpose or some sort of school of thought, so to say?
okay, so first of all, the project, and the most important project you would ever have is yourself. And don't ever let, even for a minute, Don't forget that, because
Right.
your company and whatever you might build, it's just going to be a reflection of you. So if you want to really create something amazing, you can create something great with a lot of money and whatever. But if you really want to create something amazing, you have to work on yourself. And that's the hardest job. Like, I can build you a company that I can sell for millions of dollars in certain amount of time,
Yeah.
but nothing would be as hard as training my monkey mind and dealing with me every day and making myself better. That's the
Right.
hardest job. And don't ever forget that. The other ones, great distractions. They are great. And you would probably get like caught up too much in those adventures. And it's
Right.
great. But don't let those adventures distract you from the real project. And again, the real project is you. So that would be, I think that's my life philosophy. And I wasn't born wise at all. It cost me a lot of scars and blood and sweat and tears to get to this final conclusion. For now, maybe at 80 I will have a different one, but for now, definitely that one. And the second one is understand early enough that you are here to serve.
Yeah.
We are not here to serve ourselves. That's a shallow life and a shallow path that I have gone down to, and that doesn't leave you much satisfaction. Even though you might have the account loaded, the
Yeah.
real satisfaction comes from understanding early on that you are here to serve. And when you understand that, you build brilliant companies, because you're building companies to really serve others. And that's when you create not a transactional relationship, but a meaningful relationship and real engagement. It comes from caring. So just be aware that you're here to serve. I think those are like the two main things that I would.
Well, Laura, seriously, I have to clap for that. This was golden. This is invaluable wisdom that you just provided. And I have to say, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, and sharing your experience. I think some of the problem that even startup entrepreneurs will get into. They see influencers, they see things on social media, and they think this is going to be a magic bullet, and they think it's all flash and glamour, and without keeping in mind really the blood, sweat, and tears that goes beyond this, and the degree of sacrifice, and even more importantly, the amount of self-work you have to do on yourself in the process, especially when it comes to ego, especially when it comes to how you feel. You have to be able to detach yourself from a lot of that, and that's probably the only way you can succeed, is in many ways how good you are at detaching yourself from that ego, your opinions, your feelings, and all of those other things. So again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to having you on again in a few months. I really want to hear more as far as the specifics into the projects you are working on. And I'm also looking forward to learning even more about Latin America's tech startup ecosystem and what's going on in venture capital. This
Thank
information
you.
is so helpful, and in fact, it's almost like an outline of how you can succeed and how you can fail effectively. I think from what you're saying, if you come on, if a entrepreneur comes on and they pitch to you, they're super enthusiastic, they love their own idea, but the fact of the matter is that love overshadows any common sense. It overshadows any type of ability to reflect. I would imagine from your seat, that's like a red flag. It's like, this person may have too much ego into this product, where he or she will not have the ability to change or pivot when something goes wrong. And eventually, as projects do, they become something different towards later on. How are they going to adapt to change? I think that's I think one of the things that stands out. People who are too emotionally invested, the ability to change or the ability to adapt, it seems to be very, very small.
Definitely true. And just the last thought, because I know we run out of time, and
No, by all means.
it's so much more interesting, the journey, when you get your entrepreneurial journey aside with your personal journey. It's a
Yes.
tool. Like, your entrepreneurial journey is a tool for you to polish yourself also. If you see this interaction and if you see this intersection, it becomes so much more gratifying. So you
Right.
start practicing your stoicism when something
Yeah.
goes wrong. So it is really
Right.
a better journey when you understand that one is just a tool for you being a better person. That's one. And the second one, going back again to narratives, and it's, we have to stop telling ourselves the narrative we have been telling ourselves around entrepreneurship. And it's like, I do a company, in 4 years I do an IPO, and now I'm a millionaire or a billionaire, and that's it, and it's so easy. And we keep on telling the wrong story. That's not true, and that is really fucking up
It
the mind
is.
of the
Absolutely agree.
entrepreneurs. Like, you are so forced to have a unicorn right away that it is that
Right.
you press yourself much more than you should. And the
Right.
reason is that you have to know that the story is edited. When
Right.
you ask any company how long did it take for them to went from zero to IPO, it was probably double of what they say. They start telling the story from the
Right. Right.
moment that they finally understand the model that they should be going with. But there were 3 to 5 years before that they were just rolling around. So stop
Right.
telling that fucked, sorry, narrative of just overnight success. Overnight
Right.
success might take 10 years. So stop saying that. It's just not true, and it's just not, it doesn't make you look like a superhero. It just makes everybody feel worse. And that's not fair.
That is true. Yes. These stories of overnight success, I always felt like these are actually more harmful than helpful. Because then I think that people put their own abilities next to essentially that level of perfection or unicorn. So it's like, unless everything I'm doing right now is perfect, then I'm failing. No, that's not true at all.
It's not true. And it would take double of what you think it would take, and double the effort, double the money, double the time. So just prepare for that. And don't think, if you're looking for overnight success, I don't think that this is the path. This is a great path to form yourself, and to have fun, and to serve, and to build something meaningful while you are working on yourself too. But it's not a one day, it's not an overnight success. That's not what entrepreneurship really is about.
Right. Wow. That is incredible, Laura. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Adam, for having me here. It was a
Listen,
great
thank you for
conversation.
coming on. And listen, I am very much looking forward to having you come back on in a few months. I want to dig deeper, even more, even further into these topics. And I really want to hear, and I think the audience needs to hear, as far as what to look for, what to pay attention to in the Latin America tech and entrepreneur and startup scene. So Laura, have a wonderful week. And thank you again.
Week, you too.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Take care.